I want you to look at your calendar right now. Pick a date exactly 6 years from today.
Okay.
Now, I want you to imagine that within that 6-year window, you have to revolutionize your entire industry, create art that will be studied in universities for the next 2 centuries, fall madly in love, go completely broke, nurse your family members through a deadly plague, and then die before you are old enough to rent a car without a surcharge.
It sounds absolutely impossible. I mean, if you pitch that as a movie script, they'd tell you the pacing is off.
Right, it's too much.
It's way too much for one life.
But that is the actual historical timeline of John Keats. And this is the deep dive. Today, we aren't just reading poetry. We are trying to solve a specific problem that has really puzzled historians and critics for years. How does a man with the wrong education, the wrong accent, no money, and a terminal diagnosis manage to become arguably the greatest craftsman in the English language?
And to solve that, we have to dismantle the image most people have of Keats. It's a huge task.
What image is that?
Well, if you learned about him in high school, or if you've just seen the paintings, you probably have the swooning version in your head.
Oh, the delicate flower.
Exactly, the delicate flower who was too sensitive for this world. But when you actually look at the source material, the letters, the medical records, the financial ledgers, you find something totally different. You find a street fighter.
A street fighter, I like that. And that is the mission for this deep dive. We are looking at Keats the surgeon, Keats the impoverished orphan, and Keats the philosopher. So let's start with the basics, just to ground us. 1795 to 1821, 25 years.
25 years and 4 months, to be precise. And really, the career is even shorter.
How short are we talking?
His serious writing only happened between, 1814 and 1820.
6 years.
And his publishing career, the time where the public could actually read his work, was only 4 years.
That is the part I just can't get over. It's the Mozart effect, but even more compressed. And he didn't start with a silver spoon, did he? I mean, when we think romantic poet, we think Lord Byron.
Of course.
We think aristocracy, massive estates, maybe a pet bear or two wandering around the drawing room.
Exactly. Byron is the benchmark for the era, wealthy, Cambridge-educated, entitled. Keats is the polar opposite. He was born in Moorgate, London, the working class.
Right.
His father, Thomas Keats, was an ostler.
An ostler, so he was a stable manager.
Right. He managed the horses at the Swan and Hoop Inn. Now, Keats liked to tell people he was born in the inn, which adds a nice sort of manger quality to his myth, but, the records are spotty on the exact location.
Right. The vibe is clear.
The environment is clear.
Yep.
He wasn't born in a manor house with velvet drapes. He was born around the smell of manure, hay, and the bustle of a working London inn. And the trauma starts almost immediately.
Okay, so this is tragedy number 1.
It is. When Keats is just 8 years old, his father falls from a horse. It's a skull fracture.
Oh, wow.
He dies. It's sudden, it's violent, and it leaves the family completely adrift. His mother, Frances, makes a very quick, very disastrous remarriage just 2 months later.
2 months. That rarely ends well in these stories. It just screams of desperation.
It was, and it didn't end well at all. She leaves the new husband, comes back to the kids, but then she falls ill.
Let me guess.
Tuberculosis. And this is the first time we see the family curse. Tuberculosis, or consumption, as they called it then. It just haunts this entire story. It kills his mother when he's 14.
14.
Yep.
So by 14, he's an orphan, no father, no mother. Just him, his brothers George and Tom, and his sister Fanny. They are just kids.
They're kids with a significant amount of money held in trust that they couldn't access.
Well, we are definitely getting to that.
But we will get to the financial mess later, because that is a tragedy all its own. The immediate result of being orphaned is that Keats gets pulled out of the track for gentlemanly success.
Yeah.
He doesn't go to Eton. He doesn't go to Harrow. He certainly isn't going to Oxford or Cambridge.
Which in 1815 England usually means you're done. You're labor. You aren't going to be a man of letters. But he lands somewhere interesting, right? Clark's school in Enfield?
This is a crucial pivot point. Clark's wasn't elite, but it was radical.
Radical how?
It was progressive, liberal. The headmaster's son, Charles Cowden Clark, becomes a lifelong mentor to Keats. He introduces Keats to Spenser, to history, to the radical idea that literature isn't just for the lords and ladies.
Ah, so it lit a fire.
It absolutely gave Keats a chip on his shoulder regarding the establishment, but it also gave him a very different, fresher perspective than the polished aristocrats he would later compete with.
But he doesn't jump straight into poetry. And this is the part of the research that I think changes how you read every single line he wrote later. Keats wasn't just, dabbling in a day job while dreaming of rhymes.
No, not at all.
He was training to be a surgeon.
Yes. the surgeon poet. And we need to be really clear about what that meant back then. He wasn't just a doctor in the modern sense of prescribing pills in a clean office.
Right.
He was an apprentice apothecary and surgeon. He lived in an attic above a surgery for 5 years, literally sleeping above his work.
Wow.
Then he goes to Guy's Hospital in London.
Yeah.
And he was talented. He was good at it. He was promoted to dresser.
Okay, let's unpack dresser. Because to a modern ear, it sounds like someone who helps you put on your gown. But the notes imply it is significantly bloodier.
Much, much bloodier.
Mm.
A dresser was essentially a junior house surgeon. You have to remember the context. This is 1815. This is pre-anesthesia
No anesthesia.
and pre-antiseptic.
So speed is everything.
Speed and brute force.
Mm.
If you are a dresser, your job is to hold the patient down while the surgeon cuts. You are physically restraining a conscious person who's being operated on.
I can't even imagine.
Your job is to dress wounds that are gangrenous,
Oh.
dealing with infections, abscesses, amputations. It is the most visceral human suffering imaginable.
There's a quote in the notes where a contemporary described the operating theater at Guy's as a shambles, just blood and sawdust on the floor.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And Keats was right in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And he was good at it. He had the steady hand for it. So when critics later call his poetry sensuous or talk about how he describes the physical body, the ripeness of things, the sensation of cold or heat, the flush of skin, this isn't just a poet's imagination working overtime. This is a man who has had his hands inside the human body. He knows what bone looks like. He knows the difference between venous and arterial blood.
That recontextualizes everything. He isn't a fragile flower. He's a guy who has seen people die screaming and had to keep working.
And that toll is what eventually pushed him out.
He couldn't take it.
He was good at the mechanics of surgery, but he was too empathetic. He couldn't detach in the way a surgeon needs to. His brother George wrote that John feared if he stayed in medicine, the suffering would destroy him. He felt every cut himself.
So what happened?
So in 1816, right after earning his apothecary's license, his ticket to a safe, middle-class life, he quits.
Just like that. He has the license in his hand.
In his hand. And it's a massive gamble. He walks into his guardian's office, this guy, Richard Abbey, and basically says, I'm done. I'm going to write poems.
And Abbey, who I'm guessing is a practical man?
A tea merchant, a very practical, bottom-line man. He thinks Keats has lost his mind. He calls it madness. You have to understand the financial stakes here. Keats has spent his small inheritance on this medical training.
He's invested everything.
Everything. He has the license. He has the job security.
Yeah.
To throw it away for poetry in that economy, it was financial suicide.
Which leads us directly to the money mystery. Because throughout this whole story, Keats is broke. He's borrowing £5 here, £10 there. He's wearing worn-out coats. He's stressed constantly. But the sources suggest he shouldn't have been poor.
This is the tragedy within the tragedy. There was a legacy. His grandfather left a sum, £800, and his mother left a share of £8,000.
Wait, £8,000?
£8,000 to be split among the children. That is a life-changing amount of money in the early 19th century.
That's never work again money.
Or at least write comfortably for the rest of your life money. It's a fortune. But the family solicitor, a man named William Walton, simply didn't tell him.
He didn't tell him. Was he embezzling it? Was he hiding it? What was going on?
It's unclear if it was active malice or just sheer incompetence and bureaucratic inertia.
Okay.
The funds were tied up in the Court of Chancery, which was notoriously slow think Bleak House by Dickens, that endless legal fog.
Yeah.
But Walton knew the money was there. He had a duty to inform Keats, but he didn't.
It's just maddening. It's a total sliding doors moment. If he gets that check, everything changes.
Everything. If Keats had known, he could have paid his debts. He could have supported his dying brother comfortably. And crucially, as we will see, he could have married the woman he loved.
Wow.
It's one of the great what-ifs of literary history.
So he's broke, he's a former surgeon, and he's trying to break into the literary world. And the literary world decides to stomp on him. Enter the Cockney School.
This was a branding exercise by the gatekeepers. Blackwood's magazine, specifically a critic named John Gibson Lockhart, decided that poetry belonged to the elite.
The established.
Yes. And they saw Keats, this low-born, liberal-leaning kid associated with radicals like Leigh Hunt, and they wanted to crush him.
And they didn't just critique his rhyme schemes or his meter. They went after his class. They went after his background.
It was pure, unadulterated snobbery. They mocked his lack of a classical university education in Greek. They mocked his rhymes because they used working-class pronunciations.
Unbelievable.
Lockhart wrote one of the most famous insults in literary history. He said, "It is a better and a wiser thing to be a starved apothecary than a starved poet. So back to the shop, Mr. John."
Back to the shop. That is just brutal. It's telling him, know your place. You are a tradesman, not an artist.
Exactly. And the myth, which was propagated later by Shelley and Byron, was that this review killed him.
Right. The swooning poet idea again.
Yes, that Keats was so sensitive he read the review, burst a blood vessel, and died of a broken heart. Byron even joked in Don Juan that Keats was snuffed out by an article.
But based on what we know about his time in the hospital, that doesn't track at all.
It's complete nonsense. Keats was the guy who held down amputation patients. He wasn't going to die from a bad review.
So how did he react?
He was angry. Sure, he was hurt. It damaged his prospects. But his reaction wasn't to curl out. It was to double down. He wrote to his publisher, "I think I shall be among the English poets after my death."
Wow.
He had this steely, quiet ambition. He knew he was good. He just needed time.
And that ambition leads directly to 1819, the Annus Mirabilis, the miracle year.
It is singular in literary history. I don't think there's another example of an artist maturing so rapidly in such a short window. In 12 months, he goes from promising to immortal.
So set the scene for us. Where is he mentally and physically when this year starts?
Mentally, he is in a very dark place. His brother Tom had just died in December 1818 from TB,
Of course.
and Keats had nursed him until the very end.
And nursing a TB patient in 1818 meant sleeping in the same room, often with the windows closed to keep out the night air, breathing in the bacteria constantly.
He essentially signed his own death warrant by being a good brother. He was directly exposed day after day. So Tom dies. Keats moves to Wentworth Place in Hampstead to live with his friend Charles Brawne.
Okay.
So he's grieving, he's broke, he's being mocked by critics, and this pressure cooker just explodes into art. In the spring of 1819, specifically April and May, he writes 5 of the 6 great odes.
5 of them in just a couple of months, back to back to back.
Let's dive into a couple of these because I want to understand why they work, what makes them so powerful. Take Ode to a Nightingale. The story is that he's sitting under a plum tree.
That's the story from Charles Brawne, his friend. He says a nightingale had built a nest near the house. One morning, Keats took a chair out to the garden under a plum tree and sat there for 2 or 3 hours.
Just listening.
Just listening. And when he came back in, he had these scraps of paper, just random bits where he'd scribbled down the poem. Brawne says he was shoving them behind books, almost losing them. I love that image. It's so casual for something so monumental. But the core idea isn't just, oh, pretty bird. It's deeper than that.
Oh, much deeper. It's about the contrast. The bird is immortal because its song is always the same. It's an eternal symbol. It was heard by emperors in ancient times. It's heard by clowns. It's heard by Keats right now. But Keats is dying.
Right.
He knows he is part of the world where youth grows pale and specter thin and dies. He is envying the bird's lack of consciousness of death. He wants to fade away with the bird to escape his own suffering.
That's the negative capability coming through, isn't it? That's one of his big ideas.
Spot on. This is the philosophical heavy lifting we need to do. We have to talk about negative capability because it's the key to his genius.
What is it? Break it down.
He defined it in a letter to his brothers. He said it was when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason.
Which is the opposite of how most of us operate. We want answers.
Yeah.
We want to categorize things. Is this good or bad? Is he a hero or a villain? We want a label.
Exactly. And Keats says, stop. Stop reaching. Just be in the mystery. He believed that men like Shakespeare had this power. They didn't judge their characters like Iago or Hamlet. They just inhabited them.
He called it the chameleon poet, right?
The chameleon poet. He said the poet has no identity. He fills other bodies. He enjoys the light and the dark equally. He can write about a villain with as much gusto as a hero because he isn't judging. He's just being.
So when he looks at the nightingale, he isn't analyzing it scientifically. He's becoming it and then painfully realizing he can't stay there.
That's it, precisely. And then you get to Autumn, written a few months later in September. Many critics think this is the perfect poem in the English language.
The perfect poem, that's a high bar, and it's about farming.
On the surface, yes. He took a walk near Winchester, saw the stubble fields, and thought they looked warm. But the subtext is profound acceptance.
Acceptance of what?
Of the end. Spring is gone. Summer is gone. It's autumn. The harvest is happening. The end is coming. And instead of fighting it, instead of mourning the spring, he finds the beauty in the ending itself. Thou hast thy music too, he tells the autumn.
It feels like he's making peace with his own timeline. He knows his winter is coming.
He is. And that connects to his other big idea. He's accepting the veil of soul-making.
Okay, that's another one of his big concepts from the letters.
Right. He rejected the Christian idea that the world is a veil of tears that you just have to endure to get to heaven. He said, no, that's not it. The world is a veil of soul-making.
What does that mean?
It means that suffering, pain, heartbreaks, these aren't things to be avoided. They are the tools that forge a soul. You don't start with a soul. You make one through what you endure.
That is a beautiful, resilient way to look at his own life, considering how much suffering he was dealing with.
It's incredibly profound.
And speaking of suffering and passion, we have to talk about Fanny Brawne,
The love story.
the girl next door. Literally.
Literally. They shared a duplex. Essentially, Wentworth Place was a semi-detached house. Fanny lived in the other half with her family.
And what was she like?
She was 18. She was fashionable. She liked to dance. She was a bit flirtatious. She was fluent in a few languages, made her own hats. She was vibrantly alive. And Keats was obsessed.
The letters to her are intense. They aren't the polite, courtly love poems of the era. They feel dangerous.
They are completely raw. He wrote, I could be martyred for my religion. Love is my religion. He just threw himself into it completely. But the dynamic was tortured.
Because of the money.
Money and health.
Uh-huh.
First, the money. Keats had no income. He had abandoned medicine. He was a poet who wasn't selling books. He couldn't ethically propose marriage because he couldn't support her. He was living in poverty.
And that lack of security, it made him jealous.
Incredibly jealous.
Yeah.
Because he was sick and poor, he felt insecure. Every time she went to a dance or smiled at another man, it drove him crazy. He wrote these tormented letters. One says, I have two luxuries to brood over in my walks, your loveliness and the hour of my death.
He's linking love and death constantly.
Because for him, they were happening simultaneously. He knew that loving her was futile because he was dying. He knew it couldn't last. And that brings us to the beginning of the end, February 1820. The decline begins in earnest.
This is the moment where the medical training and the personal tragedy just collide. He coughs.
He coughs up blood into his handkerchief. It's late at night. He examines it by the candlelight. And this is the moment that gives me chills. Because he's a surgeon, he doesn't say, oh dear, I'm sick.
No.
He says, I know the color of that blood. It is arterial blood.
That distinction is so specific and so terrifying.
It's clinical. It means it's not from his throat. It's not a minor vessel. It's oxygenated blood from the lungs, a hemorrhage. He looks at his friend Charles Brown and says, that drop of blood is my death warrant. I must die.
He diagnosed himself on the spot.
Instantly. He knew the pathology of TB better than anyone. He had seen it kill his mother and his brother. He knew exactly what was coming.
So the clock starts ticking. And the doctors, in their infinite 19th century wisdom, tell him he needs to go to Italy.
The classic prescription. Go somewhere warm. Avoid the damp English winter. But think about what that meant for him. He had to leave London. He had to leave his friends. And he had to leave Fanny Brawne.
And he knew he wasn't coming back.
He was almost certain of it. The separation was agonizing. He essentially broke up with her by leaving. He stopped writing to her because it hurt too much to communicate.
And the letters she sent him.
He couldn't even bear to open the letters she sent to him in Rome. He kept them, but he couldn't read them. He asked for them to be buried with him, unopened, right against his heart.
That's just devastating. So he travels to Rome with his friend, the painter Joseph Severin, and he calls this time his posthumous existence.
Yes, he felt his real life ended when he left England. He was just a ghost waiting for the body to catch up.
When they get to Rome, they stay at the Spanish Steps. I've actually seen the building. It's the Keats Shelley house now. It looks so romantic. It looks peaceful. But the reality inside those walls in 1821 sounds like a horror movie.
It was. It was absolute agony. And the treatment he received, by modern standards, it was malpractice. Plain and simple.
Who was his doctor there?
He was treated by Dr. James Clark. Clark initially diagnosed him with mental exertion and stomach issues. He refused to admit it was consumption until it was far, far too late.
And the treatment?
A starvation diet. 1 anchovy and a single piece of bread a day.
You're joking. Starving a man who was already wasting away from tuberculosis.
The logic was to reduce the blood flow to the stomach and lungs to stop the bleeding. It was completely backward. And he also bled him. Bloodletting.
No.
He took blood from a man who was already coughing it up. It just weakened him further and further.
That is horrific. And there's a story about the opium that really stuck with me.
This is one of the darkest moments. Keats and Severin had brought a bottle of laudanum, which is opium from England, for pain.
Okay.
And Keats knew the end of TB would be agonizing, literally drowning in your own fluids, feeling the lungs disintegrate. He begged Severin to give him the bottle so he could commit suicide and end the pain.
He just wanted it to be over.
He wanted a quick, clean end. But Severin refused.
Why?
Severin was a devout Christian. He believed suicide was a mortal sin that would damn Keats's soul for eternity. He couldn't bear the thought of Keats dying in a state of sin, so he took the bottle away. He forced Keats to endure the agony until the natural end.
Just unimaginable suffering. And the end came in February 1821.
February 23rd. He died in Severin's arms. His last words were incredibly brave. Trying to comfort his friend who was falling apart, he said, "Don't be frightened, be firm, and thank God it has come."
He was 25.
25 years old.
And then there's the tombstone. If you go to the Protestant cemetery in Rome, you see it. It's shocking because his name isn't on it.
That was Keats's specific request. He wanted no name, only the phrase. "Here lies one whose name was writ in water."
Writ in water, meaning it disappears the moment you write it. He died believing he was a failure.
He truly, genuinely believed he had left no mark. He thought the critics had won. He thought he was just another starved apothecary who tried to be a poet and failed. He thought his work would vanish into oblivion.
But his friends couldn't leave it at that, could they?
No. Severin and Brawne were furious at the critics. They were grieving and they were angry. So they added a note above the inscription on the stone, blaming the malicious power of his enemies for his death.
Which is so ironic.
Completely. Keats wanted to be forgotten, or at least humble, and his friends cemented his status as the victim poet right on the grave. They carved the grievance into stone.
But the work didn't disappear. The water didn't wash it away.
No, it took time. Sales were dismal during his life. I mean, maybe 200 copies total.
That's nothing.
But the narrative began to change. First, Shelley wrote Adonais, which is this massive myth-making elegy that framed Keats as a tragic genius killed by critics.
Okay, so that starts the legend.
It does. Then, a few years later, the Cambridge Apostles, a group of young intellectuals, including Alfred Lord Tennyson, started championing him.
Tennyson loved him, right?
Tennyson eventually considered Keats the greatest poet of the 19th century, even above himself, which is saying something. And then the pre-Raphaelite painters, Rossetti, Millet, they fell in love with his imagery.
Oh, of course. It's so visual.
Exactly. They painted scenes from the Eve of St. Agnes and La Belle Dame sans Merci. They made him a pop culture icon in the Victorian era. Suddenly, everyone knew Keats.
So he goes from the stable boy to the surgeon to the failure to the canon.
And today, scholars appreciate him not just as a tragic victim, but as a disciplined craftsman, a poet who loaded every rift with ore, to use his own phrase. He packed so much sensory detail into every line that you can almost taste the poems.
Thinking on his pulses.
Exactly, that's the phrase he used.
You know, we started this deep dive talking about the timeline. 25 years, and I keep going back to that letter he wrote to Fanny when he knew he was dying. He said, "If I had had time, I would have made myself remembered."
It just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
Because he did make himself remembered, he just never got to know it. He died in the dark, metaphorically speaking, thinking it was all for nothing.
It really makes you wonder. We look at Keats as this miracle, this one-off genius, but it raises a provocative question for us to walk away with. Keats died believing he was a failure. He died thinking his name was written in water. How many other failures are out there right now?
That's the haunting part, isn't it?
How many manuscripts are in drawers? How many songs are on hard drives created by people who think they didn't make it but are actually just masterpieces waiting for the right audience?
Right.
Waiting for their Tennyson to find them?
And furthermore, if Keats had lived, what would he have written at 30, at 40? If Ode to a Nightingale is what he did at 23, while sick and broke,
What would his masterpiece have been?
what would his Hamlet have looked like? We were robbed of decades of genius.
That is a thought that will keep me up at night. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of John Keats.
My pleasure. It was a great conversation.
And to you listening, do yourself a favor. Go read To Autumn today. It'll take you 2 minutes. Read it out loud. Feel the consonants in your mouth. You're hearing the voice of a man who knew he was dying and chose to see the beauty anyway. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.